Afternoon all. I thought I should try and share with you my simultaneous game where Nigel Short gave a simultaneous and it was on Tuesday night, just gone, so it's the 17th now, so it was Tuesday the 15th at about 7:30 PM at Hendon, the Real Tennis Club. Okay, so he was playing white on all boards, and I was actually the highest ECF opponent there, and it was ordered in terms of ECF order, the arrangement of the boards. I think it was like a 30 to 40 board match. I should have really counted. Okay, so he kicked off with E4, and I played my normal French defence, which he himself is an expert. By the way, he himself, when he was only 10, I think he beat Korchnoi in a Simul, and when he was 12 he beat Petrosian. So he's beaten some great players in Simuls. He was a total child prodigy really, and I've often wondered at looking at his early games, they seem to be very nice positional masterpieces. You know, he even beat Tony Miles in the Master Game series in the final round, and it was a great game with Miles under continuous pressure. It was like you know, so Nigel's been a total prodigy for years, and recently he did very well in the Gibraltar Masters. Before that, maybe a little bit of a bad patch, I guess, but he was playing, you know, top GMs just around his rating. But Gibraltar he came second as well. So anyway, on to the game. So d4 d5. After knight c3, I played knight f6, which is one of my pet systems in the French, to play this burn variation. So I capture on e4, and he did the standard knight takes e4, and I played bishop e7, wanting a bit of dynamism with my next move. So after bishop takes f6, I think it's more popular just to play bishop takes f6, but I don't really like that position much. This is a playable alternative, g takes f6. So accepting double pawns, you know, there's some dynamism on the g file, as you've seen in many of my live commentary blitz games and over the board games. I played this. I don't usually lose in this line in over the board games, so I was happy so far. Okay, you know, that structural damage, you know, carries with it a kind of less pressure on d5. You know, when there's a knight, there's more pressure on d5. That forms a basis for white strategy later, often with c4 and d5 being a thematic kind of breakthrough in the centre. Because the problem is, if something like d takes, then these guys are really exposed. You know, the whole structure falls into like 3 pawn islands, one island here, one here, and here. So c4 and d5 is a thematic break in the centre, and I thought Nigel played it with great strategic elegance, and not only that, not just a theoretical elegance, but also a nice practicality to it, in terms of linking it to my king safety and then tactical implications, and then a big passed h pawn. So I thought it was beautifully played by white. You know, sometimes you play opponents and okay, you win or you lose, and you think, you know, did they play thematically to the pawn structure or didn't they? You know, were they kind of rule based? I don't know if it's like rule based or thematic. There's a slight difference. You know, someone can be dynamic and breaking the rules but playing the position very well, the requirements of the position. But to play thematically, I think it's to be driven quite a bit by pawn structure. And here I love the thematicness of white's play. So after b6, bishop c4, none of this wasting time with bishop b5 check, because black usually wants to play c6 anyway. So the point of bishop c4, if you can arrange a battery here on this diagonal, you can exchange off my light squared bishop. And if white castles queenside, the g file pressure can be neutralised later with g3. So the trump cards then will again revolve around the pawn structure in this thematic break with c4 and d5 after that happens. So the strategic element thematic beauty from a theoretical perspective is this, you know, weakening of the light squares and playing for d5. The practical emphasis coming later, connected integrally to that, is the exploitation of the light white squares around my king. If I'm going to be castling queenside, I'm going to get tactically hammered shortly after getting strategically outplayed. But you know, I actually slept well after this game. I just, because I was really impressed, especially given it was a simul. You know how fluently, you know, he played the position. I know he plays the French himself, but you know, it was wonderful, really. A wonderful experience. So Queen E2, so this thematic battery to get rid of the light squared bishop. C6 because I want to temporarily hold the break in the centre. Now he castles queenside. So also, I guess some white plans have been playing bishop b3 and c4. I think this is more thematic, just to get rid of this light squared bishop, to rob me of the two bishops. So knight d7, rook he1, beautiful centralisation. Okay. So queen c7, I like the look of the white position as well. So I castle, and I have a slight regret after this. Should I have actually been cheeky here to think, you know, maybe this was a tiny inaccuracy. Maybe I could have afforded a6. I hesitate to switch on an engine here. Let's do it. Let's do it. Was a6 actually pliable in this position? I had a slight regret that maybe it was. Knight g3 comes in with a big impact of knight f5 though. So if I castle now, then I'm losing a6. So no, I don't think so. I think there's a big point actually. It's not just the aesthetic value of centralising the rook nicely. It carries with it a practical implication, rook he1, that knight g3 to f5 with this battery here is also going to be useful. So there's one battery after another, isn't it? One battery on this diagonal to rob me of the bishop pair. So after bishop a6, and the other battery here, you know, this knight g3 to f5 business. But anyway, I use my token sort of g-file counterplay, which would have been okay against people around my sort of rating, but you know, against someone who's been a world-class GM for many years, I think he knows how to neutralise my counterplay. So king b8, and now he robs me of the two bishops, and now. Okay, this was a curious, slightly curious move, a3. I think the idea is in some variations to avoid bishop b4. He's obviously prepared for me, looking at my win against Dave Ledger in the Southend Congress a few years ago, where I played bishop b4, so he's ruling that out. No, I doubt that he's prepared for me. That was a little joke, by the way. So I play f5, and if you're going to play f5, it's like a follows b. You should really cover that dark square weakness as soon as you can. I do so immediately, and I'm sort of thinking, well, you know, maybe there's knight e5, but maybe that rook end pawn ending, if things get simplified, would be okay. But he didn't go for that. He just emphasized the dark squares, especially e5. Okay, what have I got now? I've got this token g-file pressure, and I've got use of g4 though, which could come in handy for rook g4s. And in fact, I use the opportunity here to play rook g4, and he simply plays c3. Okay, so not minding, you know, potentially weakening light squares. There's nothing really for me to exploit this with. Look at my pieces; they're kind of passive, huddled together. Here I get a little bit desperate, I guess. I want to try and get some light square pressure, a bit of a grip on the light squares if I can get a knight to b6, because otherwise, where else is this knight going here? So I play b5. He kicks my rook. I go back, and he plays c4. So it's all beautiful thematic stuff. You know, my g-file counterplay has been squashed. My bishops have been robbed. I've been robbed of the bishop pair, and he's thematically going for this crushing break through the centre with d5. So there's this beautiful thematic play with nice tactical control over the position as well. So after a6, nevertheless, there seems to be a point where all this beauty can meet with total ugliness to try and create an equalish position coming up soon. Because in this position, after CD, I think maybe there was some sort of inaccuracy here, that it seems after knight c5, the position, you know, I think he might have played a passive move here. Let's just turn on an engine here. A slightly passive move, maybe. Maybe I was just expecting rook c1, just use the c file, use the queen. So being a Simul, you can't expect him to play the most accurate moves every time. He played knight c2, which Rgg gives a slight advantage now, dare I say it, of minus 0.03 at depth 10. It was actually higher at earlier depth. This is my claim to fame. I've got minus 0.03 with the black pieces here at move 24. And don't tell me there's bishop takes b2. Blimey, I was looking out for tactics. Apparently there's bishop takes b2 here. I completely missed this idea. Let's have a quick look at this. What's this about? Check. Knight c3. Taking the rook. Rook g4. Something to bear in mind for future games. No, apparently white's got an edge with d takes e6. So that's a bit messy anyway. No, I didn't really look in too much depth. I was on the lookout for some sacrifices. I played queen b6. And now he's got a big advantage apparently with knight e5. But now his next move might have been an inaccuracy, because here the beautiful, thematic plans can be met with total ugliness if I'm prepared to accept the most diced pawn structure you've ever seen on the king's side. If I'm not taking with this pawn, but rather taking with the queen here is apparently equalish. Apparently at depth 11, 12, this is apparently an equal position. What's going on here? So say the queen doesn't want to exchange off here. Say queen e3, then I could take, and maybe I've got enough counterplay, knight e4. I've had a similar, I remember a similar over the board encounter where I had structural damage totally, which is often a result of the initial structural damage. You get even worse structural damage later. I'm not sure. I think white's still an edge. Rook f1 still with an edge. f5 is going to be a big problem. No, I think Rgg is misassessing this. So no, I don't think this queen e6 is a brilliant improvement. Not the most startling improvement. But apparently f takes e6 is a clear advantage, at least from a Rgg point of view. No, not even this. No, this is about equal as well. Okay, what am I going on about? I'm going to turn off this engine now. Forget this. That was based on earlier analysis. I've been convinced on another machine that queen e6 was an improvement, but now I'm not. So knight fd4, targeting my weakness, but knight e4. Okay, so shielding e6 for the moment. And also, there's knight f2s on the cards. He kicks the knight. And he can't take on e6 at the moment because I can play rook d1 and then knight e6. He plays g4. So he's striking out at my structure again. And he's also now getting some tactical implications to my king on this diagonal if I play fg, which I did. And there's immediate tactical implication, which I noticed just before he came back, so I try and avoid losing a whole bishop to queen f3. Is actually going to be winning a bishop. So I move the bishop to an awkward place, but to get tempo on the rook. Check. Now this is a reconstruction job. Believe it or not, I might have this all wrong now. Trying to reconstruct. I don't think I was recording in a very disciplined way because there was a lot of pressure I experienced, which was increasing as more and more people were getting knocked out around the Simul. Nigel was coming to my board with increasing frequency, and the complexity of the position wasn't going down, it was going up. So that really didn't help me. I should have really simplified maybe earlier to a rook and pawn ending to try and hold it, to try and get a draw from Nigel. But no, I had this position and it was almost becoming like a more intimate game between like 5 people eventually and Nigel. So I was getting a bit panicky and I played what I thought was an interesting decoy idea. I played rook d6 to say, look, have my h7 pawn. I just want to double up rooks on d4. He plays check, but unfortunately the iron grip of his play comes into fore here with rook just supporting the other one, just to exchange off rooks. I play h5. What the hell? What the heck? So king c7, check. Now this is a real reconstruction, and now I think this tactical shot occurred. Maybe I was too shell-shocked here to carry on recording systematically, but there was a tactical shot like this, knight b4. So if rook takes d4, there'll be knight c6, just regaining, with advantage, that rook. So that'll be winning the exchange. So I play this terribly passive move, knight b7, trying to shield also the diagonal a little bit. Check, though not minding a deeply entrenched knight. Check, and I passively defend with bishop d8. Now he snaps up my h-pawn, which is a bit of a running h-pawn now, and he can tie me completely up now. Looking forward to a bit of breathing space with a4, a5, b4 to try and maybe get an attack going in my dreams, because my dreams are now shattered. When I play a5, he plays this startling knight sack, knight takes a5, and I remember thinking, and other spectators thinking, what? But of course he's got time, because he's going to queen this pawn. I'm tied up. So queen takes a5, knight c6, my queen goes back, and I'm still wildly optimistic about my drawing chances here. Soon, very soon, because he plays actually knight b4, and I'm thinking, well, couldn't my queen come down, and maybe my knight could join, and there could be a perpetual check via b3 and d1. But I don't think so, really. I think this position's actually busted. If we did a technical check here, which I said I wouldn't, to my surprise, actually, there's the move e5 here, or queen c7, black's better. Okay, maybe something's gone wrong tactically, or I haven't written this down properly. But this next move probably didn't help the cause. So I had this idea of queen d4, knight c5. So I think I might have tried to unpin my knight with king a7, and he advanced his pawn. Now white's clearly much better. So maybe there was only one move if this was the position. Apparently queen c7. I don't know what the detail of this is, because c2 is now covered. So what's the detail? If h6, whoa, check, queen c4, something horrible's going on here, queen c1. That's the detail of queen c7. But anyway, I had to make moves more frequently, that's my excuse, and this might not even be the exact position in Nigel's defence, because I wasn't recording in the most effective manner. In a sort of panic-stricken state, with more and more dropping out like flies. So there was greater and greater frequency for Nigel, this big 2700-ish GM, coming to my board all the time. It's frightening. So so h6, I fluffed it up just with this unpinning move. Then in theory, if that was the position, my last breath of hope lay with queen c7. Now here, queen c7, there's queen c2 apparently. Anyway, what I played was queen d4, so I think I did have this idea of knight c5 and trying to get perpetual. But I ruled it out here after his next move. Actually, white has knight c6 here. If this is the position, white's winning the exchange with knight c6. So it clearly, I'm not even sure it was the position. I'm just giving you the gist now that this pawn was basically decisive. I tried to stop the pawn with queen h5, and then there was a queen g7, which forced me to resign, because he's going to queen. I didn't want to sort of waste unnecessary time now. So that was my game. There was a curious piece sack in there to exploit the passed h pawn on the other side of the board. There was great, thematicness around his play, and that thematicness wasn't, just in a theoretical sense. It was a very practical, harsh, brutal sense as well of the tactics coming to visit my king, which are sort of rippled from the strategic implications of playing for the d5 break, breaking through all the light squares as a result, and there's light square roads into my king position, especially on this diagonal. So a beautiful game, I thought, for white, especially given it was a simultaneous as well. So I thought these are all the right moves from white. Beautiful thematic play. And he could have improved with probably a rook c1 instead of knight c2. And basically, this g4, it really the practical implications against my king are emphasised once he can rip open that diagonal. And maybe this is why Nigel gets lucky against grandmasters, it seems, recently, in dodgy looking positions, because if there's roads to get to the opponent's king, he's like Tal or something, I would imagine, once there's roads to your king, you've had it, you might as well say goodbye, So there's another road here, this diagonal to my king. With immediate thing, I don't want to lose a piece, just Queen F3. And then this desperate kind of loss of a pawn. After he gets my rooks off, he wins brutally that pawn, which is also going to play a decisive role, because my pieces are all huddled on the queen's side, and he even sacks a knight to make sure they stay in one place, and there's no liberation at all with A5 and B4. And without that liberation, there's less piece activity in SP scope, and this H pawn gets more time, all the time in the world, it seemed. But apparently, if you'd been playing Rybka, probably, Rybka would play a nasty, nasty tactic like Queen C7, if this was indeed the position, where he'd have to play precisely a move like Queen E2. But as it was, I played maybe a slow, one or two slow moves. It might not have been King A7. This might not be the exact position. But the gist of it was his pawn was totally unstoppable. A true masterclass. Nigel is selling his own DVDs, his greatest hits. I think I might get them at the full price. I think his games through his career have been very, very exciting, dynamic. His early games, I think, very, very nice positionally. He was great from a young age, winning the British, I think, at a very, very young age, beating stars in Simuls at a very, very young age. A great player, and it's great he's doing Simuls. I'm a big fan of Nigel, and nothing about that day, it's increased my enthusiasm for Nigel Short. Okay, thanks very much. Comments or questions on YouTube?